At the start of the story, we are introduced to a woman named Elizabeth. She lives in a quiet Midwestern town with her husband, Chris, and their 2 children. The older child is Matthew, Chris's son from a previous marriage, and the younger is Sam, their newborn daughter. Elizabeth is unable to speak. Her tongue was cut out long ago, and she communicates entirely through sign language. She works as a midwife and is widely respected in the community for her skill and experience in childbirth. One day, a new pastor arrives at the local church. Everyone refers to him simply as the Reverend. In his very first sermon, he speaks harshly about false prophets, calling them a disease eating away at society. The moment Elizabeth hears his voice, her face begins to shake. Terror floods her expression. It is immediately clear that she shares a dark and disturbing past with this man. Sometime later, just as the congregation is preparing to leave the church, a woman named Abigail suddenly goes into intense labor. Elizabeth reacts without hesitation. She brings Abigail inside the church and begins delivering the baby, but the situation quickly turns horrifying. Elizabeth realizes that the baby is severely deformed and that delivering it safely is impossible. The mother's life is in immediate danger. Only one can survive, the mother or the child. After a long and agonizing internal struggle, Elizabeth makes a silent but devastating decision. She ends the baby's life in order to save Abigail. When they return home, Chris tries to comfort his wife. He tells her that what happened was not her fault, but Elizabeth desperately explains through sign language that the Reverend is behind everything, that his presence is the source of this nightmare. Chris dismisses her fear. To him, the Reverend is a man of God, and doubting a man of God feels like committing a sin. Sometime later, Elizabeth goes to check on Abigail. At the door, she is stopped by Abigail's husband, Nathan. He tells her that the Reverend has already arranged for a doctor, and that there is no longer any need for Elizabeth's help. That very night, a heavily drunk Nathan shows up outside Elizabeth's house, waving a gun. He fires shots into the air and screams that Elizabeth murdered his son. Chris does everything he can to calm him down, but nothing works. Just then, the Reverend arrives and with unsettling ease manages to send Nathan away. The moment Elizabeth sees the Reverend, her body begins to shake uncontrollably. In a panic, she begs Chris through signs not to let him inside the house. But Chris ignores her fear and invites the Reverend in. The 2 men sit down and engage in a tense, deeply uncomfortable conversation. Elizabeth stands in the other room, listening, her face frozen in terror. Before leaving, the Reverend tells Chris that his wife has committed a grave sin by deciding who deserved to live and who deserved to die. According to him, such a sin requires punishment. He calls Elizabeth to come out, but paralyzed by fear, she does not respond. As he leaves, he darkens the atmosphere even further by calmly saying that he will return. The moment he is gone, Elizabeth breaks down. She begs her husband to leave the town immediately. This time, Chris finally understands that the Reverend is truly dangerous. He agrees and promises that within a few days, they will move to his father's farm. Until then, he plans to sell their sheep. But the next morning brings an even more horrifying discovery. When Matthew goes to the barn, he is confronted with a nightmare. All the sheep have been brutally slaughtered. Blood covers the ground. Chris immediately assumes that Nathan is responsible. He and Matthew grab their guns and leave to confront him. Back at the house, Elizabeth blindfolds her daughter so she doesn't have to see the carnage. She goes to the barn to clean the blood, but suddenly the door slams shut. Someone locks it from the outside. When Elizabeth peers through a small hole in the door, her heart stops. She sees the Reverend carrying her daughter away. She screams for help, but no one hears her. As she desperately tries to break the door, she slips, falls, and loses consciousness. When Elizabeth wakes up, the barn door is open. Chris has returned. He tells her that he went to Nathan's house, but discovered that Nathan and Abigail had already left town the previous night. This confirms that Nathan could not be behind the slaughter. Just then, Sam suddenly appears. Seeing their daughter alive and unharmed floods both parents with relief. That night, as Elizabeth is putting Sam to bed, her daughter asks a chilling question, whether her mother is a bad person. In that moment, Elizabeth realizes that the Reverend has poisoned her child's innocent mind. Overwhelmed by rage and grief, Elizabeth makes a terrifying decision. She will go to the Reverend's house and kill him. She takes a knife, steps out into the empty streets, and walks through the silent town under the cover of night. When she reaches the Reverend's house, she finds her daughter's doll lying on his bed. But the truth is even more horrifying. The Reverend is already inside Elizabeth's house, standing like a shadow over the sleeping Sam. At the same time, Chris wakes up and realizes that his wife is gone. He senses something wrong near the barn. Grabbing his shotgun, he steps outside. The moment he opens the door, the Reverend attacks him, stabbing him repeatedly. When Elizabeth returns home, she finds Chris still alive, but his intestines are spilling out of his abdomen. With his final breaths, Chris tells Matthew to take the family to his grandfather's farm. After that, Matthew picks up the gun and, out of mercy, shoots his father. In that moment, Elizabeth realizes the house has been set on fire by the Reverend. Without hesitation, she puts her children into the car and drives away, leaving the burning remains of her past behind. To understand who the Reverend truly is, the story now shifts into a flashback. We see a 13-year-old girl named Joanna wandering through a scorching desert. Eventually, her body gives in to thirst and exhaustion, and she collapses unconscious. A nomadic Chinese family later finds her and takes her to a nearby town called Bisbee. After Joanna recovers, she is sold to a brothel owner named Frank. Frank is a cruel and greedy man, willing to do anything to keep his customers satisfied. As time passes, Joanna befriends a prostitute named Sally. Sally looks after her, explains the brutal rules of the brothel, and does everything she can to protect Joanna from harm. One day, a drunken customer begins to show interest in Joanna. Sensing danger, Sally immediately steps in and takes control of the situation. She convinces the man to spend the night with her instead. The man agrees, but only on one disturbing condition: Joanna must watch. As the encounter continues, the man grows increasingly violent. He begins to savagely beat Sally. Then he turns his attention toward Joanna. In that moment, Sally makes a final, unthinkable decision and shoots him dead. As punishment, Sally is publicly hanged the very next day. But viewers, don't worry. I truly believe this story is heading toward a happy ending. The scene then jumps forward several years. Joanna is now grown and has become one of the most sought-after prostitutes in the same brothel. Joanna spends most of her time with her closest friend, Elizabeth. Together, they dream of escaping this filthy, merciless city and starting a new life somewhere far away. One day, a man attempts to assault Elizabeth. In self-defense, she bites off his tongue. For Frank, this is considered an unforgivable crime. As punishment, he orders Elizabeth's tongue to be cut out. From that moment on, she is mute and can only communicate through sign language. Despite everything, Elizabeth never gives up on her dream of leaving the city and living a peaceful life. One day, the two friends visit a matchmaker. He tells them that a man named Chris wants to marry Elizabeth. Chris already has a son from a previous marriage. Without hesitation, Elizabeth accepts the proposal and asks Joanna to come with her. The two return to their room and begin packing their belongings. That's when they learn that a wealthy client has booked every prostitute in the brothel for the night. That client is none other than the Reverend. That night, despite having access to everyone, the Reverend calls only Joanna to his room. He tells her that he himself is beyond redemption, but that he has come to save her. When he notices the birthmark on Joanna's neck, he recognizes her. He says, "I can forgive you, but you must accept me. This is the only way you can atone for your sins." When Joanna resists, he brutally assaults her. Hearing the struggle from the next room, Elizabeth rushes in to help, but the Reverend stabs her to death. He then turns on Joanna, trying to kill her as well. But Joanna fights back and slits his throat with the same knife. Afterward, she dresses Elizabeth's body in her own clothes and sets it on fire. Later, Joanna goes to a doctor and asks him to cut out her tongue. When the doctor hesitates, she takes the blade herself and cuts off her own tongue. Disguised as Elizabeth, Joanna boards a carriage and sets off for Chris's home. The story then shifts several years into the past. In a shocking revelation, we learn the horrifying truth. The Reverend is Joanna's father. He is a disgraced, cruel, and deeply corrupted man who regularly beats his wife, Anna. One day, Joanna notices blood on her clothes and panics, believing she is seriously ill. Her mother gently explains that this is normal for girls her age. As they speak, the Reverend watches from a distance and instantly understands what is happening. From that moment on, he begins to feel a twisted, perverse desire toward his own daughter. He stares at her obsessively and searches for opportunities to exploit her. When Anna confronts him and calls his behavior immoral and disgusting, he responds by abusing her even more violently. One day, Joanna discovers two wounded men outside her barn, Samuel and Wolf. They appear to be survivors of a brutal conflict. Moved by compassion, Joanna hides them in the barn, feeds them, tends their wounds, and nurses them back to health. Over time, a sincere bond forms between Joanna and Samuel, while Wolf constantly tries to flirt with her. Samuel eventually tells Joanna the truth. He and Wolf are not friends. Once Wolf fully recovers, he plans to kill Samuel. Knowing this, Samuel acts first. When Wolf lets his guard down, Samuel kills him. This time, fate is on Samuel's side. One day, while Joanna is changing her clothes, the Reverend secretly watches her. Anna protests in horror, saying, "How can you do this? She's your daughter." Enraged, the Reverend drags Anna to a blacksmith and orders a metal device to be forged, one that locks over her mouth. He calls it her punishment. The humiliation and pain break Anna completely, and she is no longer allowed to speak. The following day at church, as the Reverend delivers one of his hollow, hypocritical sermons, Anna does the unthinkable. She takes her own life. Even then, the Reverend shows no remorse. Coldly, he declares that she deserved it. With Anna gone, he attempts to force Joanna to marry him. When she resists, he places the same metal device on her mouth, silencing her forever. At that moment, Samuel arrives and confronts him. He tries to shoot the Reverend, but fails. The Reverend kills Samuel instead. He then drags Joanna away and brutally whips her for befriending a stranger. When he finally collapses from exhaustion, Joanna escapes. The story returns to the present. Joanna is seen traveling through frozen, treacherous terrain with her children, desperately trying to reach her father-in-law's home. Along the way, the Reverend catches up to them and mercilessly kills Matthew. Joanna is shattered, but she cannot stop. She pushes forward and eventually reaches her father-in-law's house, where she reveals the entire truth. The old man breaks down in grief over the loss of his son and grandson, but promises to protect little Sam at all costs. Later that night, Joanna stands guard outside with a gun. She sees the Reverend's shadow moving in the darkness and fires, but he escapes. From the shadows, he taunts her, trying to break her mentally. He even claims that she made a terrible mistake by leaving her daughter alone. Panicked, Joanna runs inside, only to find her father-in-law dead. She tries to flee with Sam, but the Reverend captures them. In the next scene, mother and daughter are tied to separate posts. The Reverend lashes Sam repeatedly while Joanna watches helplessly. He declares that he has committed so many sins that hell is inevitable, and he fears nothing. Just as he is about to commit an unspeakable act, Joanna breaks her own arm to free herself. She grabs a lantern and throws it at him, setting him ablaze. As he burns, helpless and screaming, Joanna shoots him point blank and kills him. Months later, peace finally returns. Joanna and Sam are living quietly at the late father-in-law's home. Joanna has started a sawmill with help from relatives, but fate isn't done with her yet. One day, a man named Nathan arrives with armed men, introducing himself as the new sheriff. He shows a wanted poster of Elizabeth, accusing her of murdering Frank, the brothel owner. Joanna realizes the truth. Elizabeth had killed Frank before coming to save her that night. But now Joanna is living under Elizabeth's identity, and she must pay the price. Joanna is arrested and taken away on a ship. As the ship departs, she sees Sam playing happily with relatives. Knowing the Reverend is gone forever gives her peace. Joanna looks at her daughter one final time, and then takes a step no one could have imagined. Years later, Sam is grown. She has a daughter of her own and now runs the sawmill. Though she lost her mother as a child, she says that even today, she can still feel her mother's presence watching over her.